Shields up, Iron Breakers. Rurikhan here coming at you with another video, and today I'm going to be bringing you my beginner's guide for Dragon's Dogma 2. This title was sent to me by Capcom so that I could give it a look and tell you guys my opinions on it. As per usual with my beginner's guide series, this video is likely going to be pretty lengthy, but it will also feature chapters. So if you go to the video's timeline, which is on the bottom of the video, the red bar, there should be chapters there that tell you, what section of the guide talks about what feature of the game. So if you want to look for a very specific information, you can. You don't have to watch the whole video, even though the whole video is going to make more sense sequentially. I want to make sure that you guys have as many options as possible. But anyways, now that I've mentioned all of that stuff, let's get down to the basics. Throughout this tutorial, I'm going to be playing as the fighter. Most of the things that I'm going to tell you are going to work for vocations for pretty much all vocations, with some slight exceptions, like for instance, whereas this vocation has a heavy attack, the mage has a heal. So naturally you're going to have to experiment with your own vocations, and not everything is going to map one-to-one, but the controls and the overall mechanics are still going to be the same. So before we even get started, I'd like to go over a couple of basic options that might be important for you. If you go over to the system settings, this is going to differ based on whether you're on PlayStation or on PC, but some of these settings are going to be somewhat similar. Now first, when it comes to controls, if you happen to be playing on PC and you're using a PlayStation controller, you can change the button icon type around. As you can see, there's different types of buttons. There's also like different configurations in case you happen to be using a Nintendo Switch controller. As you can see, some of the buttons are swapped over. So test stuff out to see how it works for you. I just like having PlayStation icons when I'm playing with a PlayStation controller because it makes things easier. So this just lets you guys know that this thing is there. This is something that I usually see a lot of people ask me, hey, why are your icons like this? And most Capcom games actually support changing the icons when you're playing on PC. Now, another very important setting is going to be on camera, which by default, the camera distance is at its closest. Now, if you're like me, you enjoy having a little bit more situational awareness, so you can actually zoom out a little bit. It's not super massive, but in certain situations, it can make a little bit of a difference. So this is actually one of the main options that I would recommend you guys check out. There's some more stuff over here, like the motion sensor function. If that's something that you use, you can actually control that over here as well. And then finally, if you're playing on PC, and if you happen to be experiencing some frame rate situations, you might want to come over and mess around with the Fidelity Super Resolution 3 if you have an AMD GPU, or DLSS if you have an NVIDIA GPU. But anyways, that's about it. There's also naturally the network features. You want to turn those on if you want to use other player pawns, or if you don't want to do that, you can go ahead and turn some of these settings off. Anyways, back to the basics. So let's talk about combat. So first thing you got to do is unsheath your weapon. Very much like Monster Hunter, this game has a sheathing and unsheathing system. This is going to be relevant later for roleplay reasons. If you run into certain characters out in the world, you just draw your sword, or if you draw your sword in the middle of a city, there's going to be a lot of people that are not going to be happy. Interestingly enough, I was able to draw my staff when I was playing as a mage, and nobody seemed to care that much, but I guess a sword's a little bit more threatening than a staff, even though a staff can wreak way more destruction. But anyways, it's important for you to know how to sheath and unsheath your weapon, and in this case it is the left trigger if you're using a controller, or if you're on keyboard you can press the X key, and X will sheath and unsheath your weapon. You can just unsheath by pressing the attack button, which the basic attack button is going to be square, or if you're on an Xbox controller it's going to be cross, or if you're on PC it will be the left mouse button, and square is also just like what you use to attack. Now, unlike a lot of other third-person RPGs, this game does not have a lock-on system, so the game expects you to kind of like face your target's general direction before you begin attacking. You can also swap directions at the drop of a dime, as you can see. So, basically aim your character's body towards the thing you are attacking. There's no other easy way to attack your enemies. There's no guaranteed lock-on. There's also no guaranteed dodge. Because, the only class that has something similar to a dodge, I think, is the Thief. I haven't played Archer yet. I imagine that Archer probably has something similar to that in your Vocation ability, but we'll talk more about those. Just be aware, not every class has a dodge. You're going to have to learn how to position appropriately. This is the reason why the game is designed for you to play with a party of 4. which as you can see we have right here, with the warrior here, Modesto, being my main pawn, who levels up alongside me, and then you have these two side pawns which are expected to rent out from either other players, or if you're playing completely offline, you can rent these out by just getting ones that the game generates for you. I'm also going to have a section of this guide that focuses on talking about pawns. Just be aware that you can't just like dodge everything like you would expect. You can run, so you can run out of the way, but keep in mind that running will consume stamina, which you can see on the bottom of the screen there. It is that orange gauge. The more you run, the more stamina you will consume. And eventually, if you run out of stamina, that's going to be very bad. So I would recommend that you make efficient use of your stamina and don't allow yourself to completely run out, because you're about to see what happens. Your character goes into this animation and you're kind of stuck, and you won't be able to move for a little while. You won't be able to cast skills. You won't be able to attack. You won't be able to do anything. Now, if your pawns get to you, like was the case there, they will help you recover. But in the middle of battle, as you can imagine, if they're busy casting their own spells or attacking enemies, that's going to be somewhat problematic for them. So keep that in mind. Basic attacks, however, do not consume stamina. So you can basically perform whatever action you want to perform to consume stamina, and then in between that, you can just use your regular attacks. As you can see, these are the basic attacks of the fighter. Pretty much all classes, as far as I'm aware, have like a basic string of attacks. Sometimes your class passive skills will extend that. Other times they will add in charged attacks, as is the case of the warrior, but also the fighter. If I hold the button as the fighter, I can actually do this. Now, this is a skill that you acquire, so if you start as a fighter, you don't have this. I'll show you guys how to acquire skills a little bit later in the video. Just be aware that eventually you might get attacks that require to charge up, or even do an attack and then pause and then keep attacking. I haven't seen all of the skills in the game. As you can imagine, this is a pretty massive game. But, you know, just be aware. Charge attacks, regular attacks, and then there's also heavy attacks. Now, this will be the triangle button or the Y button on your Xbox controller, or the V button on your PC, which, to be quite honest, I would recommend you probably rebind that to something better. But, you know, just be aware that that is how that works. If you are moving, it might be different, and different classes will have different things. So in the case of the warrior, this is a special attack that you use as kind of like a follow-up to other attacks that you do. In the case of the fighter, it's this impale thing. In the case of the mage, it's a heal, like I've already mentioned. So, you know, test out your different attacks and all of that stuff. And just remember, at any point in time, you can look to the bottom right-hand side and you can see what each of your buttons does. This also shows if you happen to be playing in PC mode, which, as you can see right there, it not just says, ooh, X, E, grab, blah, 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 blah. Okay? You guys get the idea. But this is your basics. Just keep in mind, once again, no lock-on, so make sure to aim wherever you want to attack. Now, another important thing is you're also going to be gaining access to skills. Now, these skills are, again, going to vary depending on your vocation. The way that you access them is going to be the left bumper or L1, or in the case of the PC, I actually don't know. Switch weapon skill control. You're going to need control on PC. Good lord. I can imagine this being a bit of a nightmare. Again, you'll want to like rebind your controls if you want to play mouse and keyboard. That would be my recommendation. But basically there's going to be a modifier, and that is going to grant you access to 4 different skills. If you look to the bottom right hand side, we now have access to Cloudward Slash by pressing Y or triangle, Blank Strike by pressing X or square, Launch Board by pressing A, which, by the way, is a skill that will launch your allies into the air in case you need them to, like, go to a specific place or attack a high target or something like that. And I have Shield Pummel, which is a shield bash. These skills will consume your stamina, so keep that in mind. Use your skills responsibly, but the good thing is that there's no cooldown on them. And you guys might be wondering, oh, so there's no mana system? No, everything is based on your stamina. But like I said earlier, keep in mind, you do not want to completely run out of stamina because that will be problematic. So use these responsibly. Always keep a little bit of stamina for yourself in case you need to run away, in case you need to move, in case you need to use a defensive skill like blocking, because blocking also consumes stamina. You know, keep this in mind. This also works for mages, by the way. So spellcasters also don't have mana. They use stamina very much like every other class. So as you can imagine, casting spells in this game is a whole lot of fun because you really don't have to hold back. You can just be like, no, I'm gonna cast my biggest, baddest ass spell all the time. You can do that. Just keep in mind to look at your stamina and let it regen a little bit. And then there'll also be skills that will allow you to regenerate your stamina faster, as well as do a bunch of other things that will give you quality of life the more you level up. Okay? But yeah, this is your basic skills on your L1 or left bumper or control if you happen to be on PC. Then you also have your class ability, which is going to be the right bumper or R1? Yeah. And in the case of the fighter, that's block. In the case of the warrior, that'll be the shoulder barge that goes through attacks. In the case of the mage, it's quick casting. In the case of the thief, it's a dodge. It's the only class that can dodge. They actually call it I think they call it a dash. I'm not sure. But either way, basically that will be your R1 or right bumper. Or in the case of the PC, that is going to be your right mouse button. So you'll need to experiment with these by yourself because I'm not going to be able to show you every vocation because swapping vocations takes time, swapping gear, getting their skills prepared. I'm just going to be playing the fighter for the tutorial, so just keep that in mind. Experiment with your own vocation, but be aware that these are going to be things that you're going to be doing quite often. Now, another important part of using the left bumper or control on PC or L1 is that it also grants you access to items. If you look on the bottom left-hand side, you have right there Salubrious Draught times 12. Go to Items menu, Lantern on, and Harspud Rubrant. This is when you're on controller. These are going to be different D-pads. But basically the idea is up D-pad, when you're pressing that modifier, is going to give you a heal. Down D-pad is going to give you something that restores your stamina. And left D-pad takes you to the items menu so that you can see the items that you have available to you. We're going to be talking more about items because these are also extremely important, okay? And then the other one is your lantern. Lantern is also very important because as you can see right now, it's daytime, we're outside. But if we go inside this cave, look at how dark things are going to get. Right now we can still see because there's a source of light coming into the cave. But as you dive deeper and deeper, as you can see, you can't, or better yet, as you can't see, you can't really see much. Now, the reason you're seeing like some fire and stuff is because they are enchanting weapons, and this is just stuff that pawns start doing automatically. But when you are in a cave, you will want to go ahead and turn on your lantern, which again, left bumper, L1, control, and then in the case of control, I think it's like numbers if you happen to be playing on PC. So it would be control and then R. Control R. You really want to change these controls. This is insane. But yeah, we're going to go ahead. We're going to turn on a lantern. And as you can see, now we are actually able to see in this cave. This also works for when it's nighttime in the world. So when it's nighttime in the world, it gets real dark. So you better get used to always pulling out your lantern situations like this. And also, you might want to make sure that you always have some of these. Lantern oil. You do not, trust me, you do not want to be caught without lantern oil, okay? You're going to have yourself a really bad time. Now, let's step outside again before we actually go into proper combat, because I'm going to be showing you guys a little bit as to how you can do combat, how the new mechanic works for turn off the lantern. Always remember, when you're outside caves and it's not nighttime, turn off the lantern so that you're not wasting oil. But you know, I'm going to be showing you guys how the new critical hit mechanic works, but I also want to show you first about items. So as you play through the game, you're going to be able to collect items out in the world, which curiously enough, in this particular location, there's not that many, even though the pawns are saying, oh, here we go. This is very important. This right here, this plant, this should be green varish. Yes. Green varish is something that you want to pick up as much as you possibly can because this is a herb that heals you. So when you pull up the healing stuff, that is going to be one of the items that we'll automatically use. But another important thing is as you play the game, as time passes, things get rotten. So for instance, this apple used to be perfect when I first started playing earlier today. Now it's ripened. So this is ready to eat. This is still perfect. It will recover a little bit of your health. However, if you let enough time pass, eventually it becomes like these, a rotten apple. So you either consume something or eventually it just goes rotten. Like this fish is rotten, this meat is rotten, this beef steak is rotten, all of this stuff is rotten. So one of the things that you want to do is you want to combine items as you pick them up to prevent them going rotten like this. Now, items going rotten is not the end of the world. Like, don't be stressing out all the time because of this, because I remember in the original Dragon's Dogma, I would stress out all the time. It's like, oh, my items are going rotten. If you actually store these in city, they don't go bad. You can pick them up later and whatnot. But if they're just sitting in your inventory and time is passing, they go bad. But anyways, you can click an item and you can hit combine. And usually what you'd have to do in the original is you have to go ahead and combine stuff. But in this one, they've done something really cool, which you can press the right bumper, swaps to use recipe, and it actually tells you the different things that you can do. So for instance, right here, this is actually really good. We can combine rotten shorefish with rotten harspud, which are basically rotten ingredients. You can just combine those and make some more lantern oil. So this is very useful. You can also combine the ripened apples, and you can do dried fruit. Now, dried fruit doesn't really run out, so it doesn't rotten because it's dried, right? We take the moisture out of it. So boom, you can do that. You can also then make fruit rubriant, which is a little bit better than just dried fruit, but this also uses that green varish that I told you guys about. But basically combine that, and there's another healing item. Make it a habit to combine things, but don't combine everything. So like, for instance, the exquisite dried meat, that is something that you can actually use as a meal when you camp, which we'll talk about camping as well a little bit further ahead. So keep that in mind. But just be aware that you want to be combining items to prevent things from just going bad. Okay, and just because something is bad doesn't mean that it no longer has value, because as you guys saw earlier, we just made some lantern oil out of some rotten things that we had in our inventory. Just be sure to check the recipe. So just pick any item, hit combine, then grab that recipe menu and see the things that you can craft. But anyways, let's actually take a quick gander around this cave so that we actually engage in a little bit of combat so that you guys can see how you go about doing things. As you can see, we're running, so we're running out of stamina, so you want to stop running so that you don't go into that state where you're down and, you know, enemies can get to you. So let's move a little bit here, and as you can see, we have some enemies. Going to draw our weapons, going to get to attack them. I'm going to try and hit them hard to see if I can just show you guys the critical attack, which is a new thing. Remember, when they're about to come at you, you want to block. You can parry with the fighter. Gonna use one of my skills. Bam. Hello. Oh, God. Dude. My pawn's too strong. I think he just chopped both of those down. But there's a couple of tougher ones a little bit further ahead in this cave, so we should be fine. There. See, that's a critical attack. As the monster gets launched or staggered or whatever, you can just go up to him and hit him. Now, another important thing that some people are going to miss early on is that dead monsters have loot. So you need to walk up to it and actually press the corresponding button in order to loot them. Otherwise, you might miss out on some important loot, important materials. These are materials that will be used to upgrade your armor, upgrade your weapons, and, you know, just upgrade gear in general. So keep that in mind. But yeah, that's combat, looting. We haven't really needed to heal all that much. It'd be great if I could go ahead and take some damage. Oh wow, this thing is dead. This guy's draining all of our stamina. Oh, whoa, 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 boom, dead. And now you guys are like, wait, what the hell? Yeah, these dudes are actually able to just flat out murder you. So you gotta be careful with that stuff. Now, one of the things that we're going to do, we're going to load from last save, and you're going to notice that our health, our max health, is going to be lower because we've accrued loss gauge. I actually don't know how far back this is going to send me, but the autosave has actually been very good about where it puts me. So as you guys can see, we're like right before we died because we were just moving down through this. And now notice that our health our max health is significantly lower than it was before. Even though they're saying, oh, I'm going to heal you, it doesn't matter. We can't be healed any more than this. So you're going to have to camp or rest at an inn in order to be able to get more health, which is one of the things that you're going to have to keep in mind. But anyway, that's about enough of exploring this cave. I want to leave the exploration and stuff to you guys. I'm going to fast forward us to a different location. Another thing that you can do whenever an enemy is downed is you can actually grab them and you can throw them. You grab them by pressing the right trigger or E, and then you throw them by pressing the right bumper, or in the case of the PC, which one was that? It will be your right mouse button. You can also grab their corpses and throw those if you want to. That's an option. Mostly because it's also just fun, and if you throw them up against walls, there's also physics and stuff. It's just a fun thing to do, you know? Who doesn't like goblin tossing? Bonk. I love it. But yeah, you can also do that in combat. And you can even pick one up and throw them against another one that's active, which is also pretty cool. Harpies is a good reason to have ranged characters in your party, because there's going to be several situations where you're going to be dealing with harpies, and if you happen to be a melee character, hitting them is a bit of a nightmare, and they will put you to sleep, and then like they'll grab you and throw you, and it gets a little bit annoying. So having a well-balanced party with a couple of ranged characters is good. Thieves also have an ensnare ability that will allow you to deal with these, which is nice. But like the limited fighter jumping attack is not fantastic, because like they can just fly higher than you. You don't even have to worry about it. Come on! There. They're done. But keep in mind, having like an archer, mage, sorcerer, or other vocation that allows you to deal with ranged enemies could be very useful. So now let's talk about bigger monsters. There's a Minotaur up ahead, and we're going to be fighting that. And the Minotaur is actually one of the new monsters and allows me to showcase some of the new combat stuff that you can do in the game as well. Some of the new and some of the more iconic, already existing stuff. But something that you're going to want to get used to, particularly if you're playing melee, you want to get used to jumping and pressing down on the right trigger, or E if you are on mouse and keyboard. Because you'll be able to grab onto monsters, and then you can just like attack them with your light attack or with your heavy attack. Just keep in mind that all of this consumes stamina, and you want to get out before you run out, because otherwise you're going to be in this sorry state. Luckily I was next to a pawn, so he instantly picked me back up. But you want to do better management of stamina than I did right there. Anyway, I'm going to jump up because I want to show you something else. In the previous Dragon's Dogma, you had to always be grabbed on. But in this Dragon's Dogma, if you happen to be on a stable enough surface, like say this Minotaur's head, you can actually press the grab button again and you let go, and you can do even more devastating attacks like this. So this is something that I would definitely recommend you experiment with. Just keep in mind that while you are doing this, you are not grabbing on, which means that he can shake you off like that. So, you know, but it is a cool thing. Like, you can just straight up ride a griffin like this, and the griffin will straight up take you flying, and you don't need to, you know, grab on the entire trip and just eat food to stay grabbed on. But you can also use stamina food whenever you're grabbed on in case you're running out of stamina. So right now, right, I'm sitting here, I'm attacking him, I'm going to be on top of him for a little bit, and you can see that my stamina is draining. If you hold down left bumper, or in the case of PC I believe it was control, and then you hit down, and in PC there's going to be like a different button there, you'll see that I can recover my stamina and I can stay in there for longer, right? And then eventually when he stops messing about like this, you can even let go. If he falls down, remember, critical hits, heavy attack on the head. Massive damage. And also, keep in mind that you're supposed to be doing like your skills and stuff, whatever skill is best for the situation. Here's another thing that I can do, because I have the shield spring, I can actually just have one of my pawns come over to do an aerial attack. Although we kind of missed miserably there. To me! Let's go! Let's throw all of you boys up in there. For funsies. You missed. The other thing that you can do is you can issue commands to your pawns. This is not just limited to big targets, but I'm going to use this big target to exemplify. So let's say you actually want to run away. Your pawns are going to keep fighting because they don't know what you're doing. You can press down on D-pad or on PC. It will be the 2 button and it will trigger the to me command and your pawns will kind of like rally onto you. Depending on their inclinations, because there are pawn inclinations, this might change how good they are about doing things. So yeah. Also, whenever you see a mage do this spell, the yellow bubble, this is a heal. You want to stand in it. Okay, let's go ahead and actually start slashing away at this dude. Let's beat his ass, because he's got it coming for a while now. Whoops, I'm running out. No! Oh, I still ran out of stamina. Boom! Get yeeted. I love the animation, so good. And he killed one of your pawns. He might even kill 2 of them if we're not careful. But in order you can resurrect your pawns, it's not a problem. Just go up there, resurrect them. He then bashed himself into a wall. I'm actually going to execute the go command to have the pawns go ahead and attack because I was using just the to me command, which kept them from attacking. So go ahead, attack, boys. Get him. In case you guys are wondering why our weapons are enchanted with fire, that's one of the perks of having a mage. Mage will buff your party with fire attacks, ice attacks, lightning attacks. Gonna jump off. Oof. Get rocked, Sonny Jim. Another thing that you can do is you can throw rocks at them, so you can straight up grab a rock. Then if you hold down the R1 button, or on PC it's probably going to be the right mouse button. That also does a decent chunk of damage, as you can see right there. So keep that in mind if you can throw things. Sometimes there's even explosive barrels that you can throw. Those are also very useful. Bonk. He broke my stamina, so now I get to get bashed in the face. Oh man, there's an Oxcart. Eesh. This is actually very convenient because it will allow me to show you guys how Oxcarts work. Hopefully, don't break the Oxcart, bro. There we go. Once you kill a big target, don't forget to loot it. So you can walk up to it, and you can just like mash the circle button or the B button, or on PC it'll probably be, I actually don't know what it will be on PC, F. So we mash that and that will get us the loot. Remember to sheathe your weapons because the guards were getting pretty upset. These guys are guarding the Oxcart. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to take the Oxcart because this allows me to show you guys how Oxcarts work. This is a fast travel mechanic. See, everybody says there's no fast travel in this game, but actually there is. It's called the Oxcarts. So if we go over to the Oxcart and we just go ahead and we sit down,
this Oxcart's bound for Vernworth.
He'll tell you where he's going,
I'll need to see some coin before I let you
but
on.
then you have to pay in order to actually go to the location. Now, an important thing here is there's a chance that your Oxcart gets attacked along the way, so keep that in mind. But if nothing bad happens, we'll just arrive at the city safely. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to pay him the money, and then you can hit triangle, Y, or V, I guess? Yeah. No, actually it's C to doze off for some reason. You doze off, and now we're going to wake up and we're going to be in town. Or we're going to wake up and there's a vicious Cyclops getting ready to destroy us. Nope, we woke up, we're in town. It's all good. This is the fast travel system. To give you guys an idea how much we just traveled right there, the place where we fought the Minotaur, I think, was around here. It was either around here or around here. It was in one of these two locations. And we picked up the Oxcart, and the Oxcart went all the way through here, through here, through here, until we landed in town. So Oxcarts are very convenient, and usually at the exit of every town, you will find an Oxcart if it's a big enough town. Like as you can see, North Vernworth Oxcart Station, And then there should be another one around here, West Vernwood Oxcart Station. And as you can imagine, if you actually go up to the map, the West Vernwood Station would take us to... It's not... I don't think it's Harvey. Oh no, the west one actually goes all the way... It goes really far. The west one goes really far in the map. I don't want to show you guys too much of the map because spoilers and whatnot. The west one goes all the way here. So it's a pretty lengthy trip. And this one goes all the way up to Melv, I think. Yeah, it goes all the way up to this little town that you guys see over here. So, you know, you can obviously check before you embark. So you can just talk to the cart guy, the ox cart guy, which would be this dude. I don't know if the ox cart is... Okay, he can't offer you a ride. In case he can't offer you a ride, you want to go over here and you want to hit this await ox cart. So you await the ox cart. What's going to happen is some time is going to pass, and the next ox cart that is going to this location will show up. So once he shows up, you go and you talk to this guy with the hat. He's going to be the ox cart driver, and he tells you where the ox cart is going. And then if you pay him, you can once again board the ox cart and go to your destination. You can check on the map where it's going. Like I said, this one's going to Melv, so it would go over here. And, you know, naturally, as you play the game more, you will learn more ox cart routes. Just keep in mind, eventually, you might get interrupted on your ox cart. So that's going to be something that you'll want to pay attention to. Every now and then, you might run into a situation where an item seems a little bit out of reach. Some vocations will have specific skills that will allow you to actually get there. So, for instance, if my pawn was, or any of these pawns was equipped with Springboard, they would actually be able to assist you in getting there. You could just straight up give them the go command with up D-pad or whatever key it is on PC, and they would figure out a situation to kind of like launch you up there. Now, I myself have the Springboard skill, but I don't actually know if the pawns are smart enough to use it to get up there, because I haven't really tested it yet. There it is. Now get that chest. Yeah, see? I can also have the pawn go up there and do it. Oh, it's actually a Wakestone shard. That's actually pretty good. But yeah, you can use the pawn to get up there, or you can get the pawn to launch you by hitting go, and he will go ahead and, if he has the Springboard skill, he will launch you, which is also a pretty good way of doing it. But just be aware that there can be unconventional solutions, and not everything is just about, oh, I got to figure out a way to climb there or something. Another way of probably doing it would be if you had a... Like, for instance, you could probably get from up there, if you are a mage, you can levitate down to that rock. So that's another way. But yeah, there's plenty of ways to solve things. Just get creative as to how you use your skills, because it gets really cool. But anyways, the reason I actually came here is because in our previous fight against the Minotaur, we took substantial damage. And if you notice, my max health is now capped. I have significantly less. This is the loss gauge. The more you adventure out for longer periods of time, the more this will accrue and the harder things will get. And if you actually die, you will lose even more of this health gauge. However, camping can actually solve that. So I would recommend, as soon as you can, get yourself a camping kit. Now, in my case, I bought this one, which is a grass pattern camping kit. The one thing that you have to pay attention to is that these can break. So if you get attacked in the night, these can actually break. So if you're scared of breaking it, bring 2 of them around, because you're going to want to be able to camp several places, particularly if you're making a long journey. So say, for instance, if you're going across and you need to like go from here to like all the way here, and you don't have an easy way of doing it, you'll want to stop by some of the campsites to rest along the way, because you're going to get attacked, you're going to lose max health, maybe you'll even die and you'll have to reload your save, which causes you to lose even more max health, and eventually you are going to have to camp. So let's go over here, make camp. You can also change your skills at a camp without even camping. So you can go equip skills. This actually lets you change your skills. In my case, I can't really change because I only have the skills that I'm using. But if you had more skills acquired, you could swap these at a camp to kind of like change your stuff on the go. Same thing for our pawn here. You can change his skills as well. But we're actually going to go ahead and make camp. If you have multiple camping kits, it will tell you which one do you want to use. We're going to use this one. We camp till morning. You can also camp until the night in case you want to be out at night. Certain quests can only be completed at night, so you might also just want to pass the time till night. Now, when you camp, if you have food on you, you're also going to be given the option to cook, which I would recommend. Because this is very much like Monster Hunter, so whenever you cook, you're going to gain buffs. So in this case, depending on the meat that you use, you're gonna go ahead and get different buffs. You can even cook rotten meat. You're just not gonna get that many buffs from it. I actually don't know how it looks. I'm not going to do that. You guys feel free to do that and experiment in your own time. I'm going to go ahead and give us an HB steak. You can see the effects. We're going to gain more strength, gain more defense, gain more stamina, and gain more recovery. So obviously eating is a very good thing. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Get a little animation. Man, that does look nice. This is actual just real life footage. They're like, why bother doing it in game? We can just do the real thing. There. So now everybody eats. And then after that, you can just rest. And in here, you can rest until nightfall, rest till morning, rest how long you want. We're going to go ahead, rest until morning. And on this occasion, we were not attacked, but there's always a chance that you're attacked in the middle of the night. And, you know, we weren't attacked. And now if you look, our health gauge is fully buffed. And also we have damage buffs, defense buffs. You can see those immediately above our health, which is very good. So make a habit of camping often because that will keep your party very healthy. And it's just a good habit to keep up with. Now, another important thing is that as you play the game, you're going to run into these Riftstones. These might become useful in case you lose a pawn, because sometimes in the heat of combat, you might lose a pawn. You need to recover it. But at the same time, I think the more of these you recover, you're going to be given additional options when you're summoning pawns in the Rift. I haven't fully explored the potential for this, but I would recommend when you come across these to repair them. Unfortunately, it also costs Rift crystals, so you know, those are not super common to get. You're going to need your pawn to actually be rented out by other people in order to get Rift crystals, or you're going to need to find them out in the world. But it's not a super common resource. But basically, you can then come up here, and you can go into the Rift from here, and this allows you to summon pawns. And this is the Riftstone of Duty. But I'm going to tell you guys more about how to summon pawns when we're actually in the city, because the functionality of these Riftstones is quite limited, because you can just, you know, you get what you get. That's it. You get these pawns right here, and this is what you get. Whereas in the other one, in the middle of town, you can actually choose, you can do advanced searches for pawns that are way cooler. Okay, so now we're in the main square of the very first main city that you'll have access to. And I want to call out your attention to all of the different buildings there are around here, because these are places that you're going to have to learn how to navigate reasonably fast. And it can be a little bit confusing at the start. So over here to the left, we have the Tavern. This is going to be used for you to come and meet up with some NPCs for quests and stuff like that. Just be aware if an NPC tells you that they'll meet you at the Tavern, you're supposed to be coming here. Now, another important thing about the Tavern is that sometimes the NPCs that you're looking for are not going to be here, because each NPC has its own schedule. So you might find yourself in a situation where you're like, hey, the other dude told me to meet him here, and now he's not here. What you're going to do is you're going to want to talk to the barmaid over here, Glenna, and you just tell her, pass the time. And as you hit this, the time passes in game, and eventually the other character will show up. If it doesn't show up after the first one, hit pass the time again. Most likely the character will show up. However, there's an important downside to doing this, and that is certain quests in the game are time sensitive. So whenever you pass the time actually passes in game, whether it is in this tavern, or it is waiting for an Oxcart, or whether you're camping outside, time is passing. And certain quests are time sensitive. Now, I don't have any of those quests right now, and I don't want to like show you guys too many quests to prevent spoilers and stuff like that. But basically, when a quest is time sensitive, in the same place where you see that little hand there with a 1, there'll be an hourglass, and it will be flashing to let you know this quest is time sensitive. So if you pick up a time sensitive quest and that quest is important for you, like if you want to ensure that you're going to complete that quest, you should prioritize that one over all of the other quests, because that is the one that can fail, whereas the other ones that are not time sensitive, you can do them whenever you want. But be aware that I think that the passage of time has other effects in the game. And if you're just wasting all of your time passing time, I think you might eventually miss out on certain events in the game. So while I'm not saying be all stressed out, passage of time super important, I am also saying don't be too lazy about getting to your objectives because it can become problematic. But yeah, that's how you're going to be able to talk to some of the characters and all that stuff. It's going to be over there in the tavern. Now, a couple of more things. Over here, you have your weaponsmith. So here is where you go ahead and you buy weapons. But the reason I wanted to talk about this is because this is also where you come to enhance your equipment. Now, equipment enhancing in Dragon's Dogma 2, there's actually different types, and apparently those will be in different cities, I would assume, because these guys offer Vermundian enchantment enhancements, which you can see right there at the top. And it tells you style smithing common throughout Vermund favors a tried and true method that moderately enhances all attributes of a piece of equipment. But I was told in the tutorial when I first started looking into enhancements that you will eventually be given other options wherein you can just upgrade the magical properties of a weapon or upgrade the raw damage properties of a weapon. So different vocations will benefit differently from, different stuff. But usually keeping up with upgrading your gear is something that you're going to want to do, particularly if you're starting to struggle with the monsters that you're fighting and you don't have like a new weapon or anything like that. Just pick up whatever weapon you have, come in here and upgrade it because it's usually not too hard for the first couple of levels of upgrading, and eventually you're going to have to deal with dragon forging, but that's not going to be something that I'm going to be covering here. Assuming that Dragon's Dogma 2 even has dragon forging, I haven't progressed that far. And here you have armor pieces in case you need to buy better armor and stuff like that. Usually I try to loot stuff more so than buy stuff, but it's an option that you have in here, so you can go and do that, and you can also enhance your equipment here as well. It's also same Vermundian enhancement style. Now, another building that is in here, and you'll start to recognize these by the logos, like that right there. That is the symbol of a pawn's hand. So this is the Pawns Guild, and this is where we're going to be summoning additional pawns. We'll get to this in just a second. Up here, the symbol of like the hearth and the stars. This is obviously an inn. You can come to inns, and in certain smaller cities, the innkeeper will also act as the Vocation Guild, which we're going to be talking about in just a second. But basically, your inn is where you can go and you can manage your storage, and you can also rest. Whenever you rest at an inn, that creates a save, like a save state in your save file, because save file always has two save states, the autosave and the inn. So I would recommend whenever you get to a major city, after you've done something important, come in here, rest at the inn, just in case you get yourself in trouble and you're like, oh my God, now I've put myself in this terrible situation. You can always go back to that save where you were last rested at the end. So use this often. This also works very much like camping, so it fully restores your health in case you have loss gauge and all of that stuff. So keep that in mind. Also, this is where you get the rewards from your pawn. So if your pawn is rented by somebody, it will only give you the rewards after you rest at an inn. So you should make it a habit of periodically just resting at inns. It's a very good habit to have. Now, also, inns have your storage, so you can deposit stuff. You can deposit multiple things at once if you want. So you can just hit square, or it's going to be on PC, or shift, or you can hit X on Xbox controllers, and you can select multiple items. Then you press the A button or cross or whatever it is on PC, and it will deposit all of that stuff, or you can withdraw. In order to enhance your items, eventually they're going to ask you for materials. And unfortunately, unlike the original Dragon's Dogma, you need to come to your storage and pick those up manually, which I feel like is a little bit too much of a downgrade. Just feels like busy work, especially because in the original, it would actually use materials from your storage. At least if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure you could use materials from your storage. And I hope that they would eventually patch that, because I just think it's very inconvenient to have to come in here to pick up a material that I know I already have. It's just annoying. But yeah, this is where you have to come and get your materials, or in case you store equipment, you need to come and get it here. And by the way, I would heavily recommend that you keep one of each of the weapons that you pick up because sometimes they can become really powerful. So just keep one of each would be my recommendation. I would actually not get rid of weapons, but I don't know if that's going to be important or not. In the first Dragon's Dogma, I feel like it was important to keep one of each because sometimes you get some weapons that are really good once they get Dragon Forged. So, you know, but yeah, you get a lot of stuff that you can store here. Manage your storage, this is your stash. So yeah, that's the importance of the inn. Resting, receiving stuff from your pawns, and also managing your storage. Immediately below the inn in this town, you'll notice that there's a symbol here. This is your Vocation Guild. This is where you can come to change vocations, learn new skills, and learn all of the stuff about vocations. Now, in my case, I've already unlocked quite a couple of vocations. I've unlocked Warrior and Sorcerer at the beginning. You only have Fighter, Archer, Mage, and Thief. Unlocking Warrior and Sorcerer is super easy. They tell you exactly where you have to go in order to unlock these. Mystic Spear Hand is a little bit trickier, and I haven't really played with it. I've actually unlocked it today right before I started doing this tutorial because I randomly ran into it. But yeah, this is where you can come. You can change your vocation. You can get your weapon skills, get your core skills, get your augments. This uses a separate currency, which is called discipline, which basically you just get this currency by participating in combat. The more things you kill, the more discipline you get so that you can buy more core skills. Now, core skills are passive skills. These you'll just have forever. Some of them change the way that your character work. Like in here, True Deflect. So this is basically your parry. And whenever you do this, you don't spend stamina, and at the same time, you're going to send the monsters reeling. Tusk Toss is the charged attack that I was showing you guys for the fighter. Steeled Foundation, this is something that actually lowers our fall damage, but it does require inputs. You have to press right bumper. And then Enchanted Counter is something that whenever you counter or you guard and your weapon's enchanted, you're actually going to set your monsters on fire or deal lightning damage or deal frost damage, whatever the case happens to be. But different vocations have different skills. Just be aware core skills are overall passive. Now, another important thing is augments. Now, the reason augments are very important is because you'll want to unlock as many of these as possible, at least the ones that you're interested in, because augments can be used across vocation. So if you actually pay attention there to the right side where it says metal, it's got a symbol. That's the fighter symbol. So this is an augment from the fighter. Provocation is also an augment from the fighter. Thew is an augment from the fighter. And by the way, might I recommend that everybody starts out as a fighter and level it up to rank 4 to be able to unlock this augment, because then you can use this augment on all the other vocations. And at the beginning of the game, I would heavily recommend you to get Thew, because being able to carry additional weight, you can thank me later, okay? Trust me. So playing as a fighter, getting it up to rank 4 and getting Thew, big recommendation. You don't have to do it, because at the end of the day, play whatever way you feel is fun. But I would heavily recommend you to get this. Anyway, then as you can see, we have another augment, which is from Thief, Subtlety. You have another one from Thief, also Gratification. You have one from Warrior, Maximum Health. And basically, you can mix and match these regardless of which vocation you have. So you can get augments from Thief and use them on Fighter, which is what I'm doing. You can see I have Gratification in there, and I have Subtlety in there. So, you know, this is one of those things where being able to have tons of augments is going to enable you to have a lot of variety in how you build your class. And it's really fun to just mix and match different augments from different vocations. And it gives you a reason to try out all of the different vocations to level them up to be able to get their augments. Now, you can also check which augments you can get from each of the vocations that you've unlocked. The way you do this is, as you can see, right here in the middle of the screen, it actually straight up says View Augments. These are all the augments that you're going to be able to get as a fighter. These are all the augments that you're going to be able to get as an archer and mage and so on and so forth. And there's a button over there on the lower right-hand side that tells you Augment Details. So in my case, it's going to be square or X, and for PC, it is going to be Shift. Basically, you press that, and then you can cycle through and see which each of the augments does so that you can kind of plan out the character that you want to do, which is pretty cool. I really enjoy this stuff, min-maxing, figuring out, okay, I need to level up this vocation up to this rank, then level up this other vocation up to this rank to be able to get this other skill. And, you know, there's some cool stuff in here, and there's a lot of min-maxing and character theory crafting that you can do. So I would recommend you to spend some time figuring this out and seeing the things that you wanna see. Another important thing when it comes to being around in cities and whatnot is that the stuff that's in cities is just loot for you. This isn't Skyrim. So for instance, you see the chest that's back here? This used to be closed. I just straight up jumped back here and stole the stuff that this guy had. And there's nothing that he's going to do about it because it's not illegal. Like the loot that is in the game is loot for you. You can just pick it up and it's not a big deal. It's whatever. However, one of the things that you have to keep in mind, like I told you guys about your weapon, is you want to be careful about drawing your weapon in public because people don't like that when you're in a city. So for instance, if I just come up here, draw my weapon, like see how people are recoiling? They're like, oh my God, this guy's got his weapon drawn. Oh no, this is bad. We're all going to die. And if you keep walking around like this, there's a chance that eventually the guards are going to show up. You're going to get involved in the confrontation. You definitely don't want to be attacking NPCs because they don't like that. So keep that in mind. Keep your weapon sheathed when you're in town. So now let's talk about pawns. This big building right in the middle of town, right next to the inn, you can see that it's got the pawn hand symbol right there. This is where you can come to summon pawns. It also has one of the biggest Riftstones I've seen in the game so far, and this Riftstone actually appears to give you additional options. So if you're looking for a very specific pawn, this is going to be one of the Riftstones that you're going to be wanting to getting it on. Now, before we actually jump into the Riftstone itself so that I can give you a couple of tips as to how to go about recruiting pawns, I also want to talk to this gentleman. Now, he sells you incense that allows you to change the inclination of your pawns. And I want to talk about pawn inclination before we actually jump into the Rift so that you can understand what you can expect from each of these pawns. Their inclination is essentially the way that their AI is designed to work. Now, the ambivalent incense is going to make your pawn into the ambivalent inclination, but I haven't actually messed with this one around too much, but from what I can tell, I believe this is probably going to be Jack of all trades, master of none, which probably would also explain why it's one of the cheapest ones. It only costs around 500 Rift Crystals, where some of the other ones are significantly more expensive at the price of 2,000 Rift Crystals instead. So, Jack of all trades, master of none. Then if we go to the kind-hearted, this is the inclination that you usually want to get on healers. This is the type of pawn that is going to be mostly focused on support. So if you want to have a mage that focuses mostly on healing and buffing you, this is the inclination that you want to have on that pawn. Then you have the calm. Now, calm, from my interpretation so far, appears to be what you want to have on your tank, which I know it's kind of weird. You probably think it should be straightforward, but calm is more for a pawn that wants to think strategically and from a defensive standpoint, and that is actually going to be the one that is going to be on my pawn throughout most of my experience, unless I eventually find out that, you know what, straightforward is actually the way to go. But for now, my interpretation is that calm is what you want to have on your tanks, because that is going to make them actually focus on protecting you and tanking and thinking strategically, which is important for the tank. Simple is for the type of pawn that you want to go and grab a bunch of loot and just do a bunch of random stuff. Basically, they're going to run off, try to find hidden things, try to loot everything they possibly can. That appears to be this inclination. And finally, straightforward is what you want to put on whatever pawn you want to have to just deal a bunch of damage. So I'm thinking probably warriors, if you're thinking about building a damage warrior, or thieves, if you want them to be more damage inclined, or even archers, sorcerers, that type of stuff. That is where I would put the straightforward inclination. But this is just to give you guys an idea of what to expect from the behavior of each pawn on kind of like a surface level, because naturally more experience is probably going to reveal more things, but for us to get started, that should be enough. Now let's go ahead and actually jump into the Rift so that you guys see what we are working with here. So, once you jump into the Rift, you're going to be surrounded by pawns. You can start recruiting immediately, but to be honest, you don't have to. You can just go up to the Rift, hit the button again, and then you can search for a very specific pawn. Now, there's a couple of more functionalities here, such as view linked Riftstones. I haven't really played with this too much, but this has to do with those broken Riftstones I told you guys about. Those are the ones that are going to be showing up here. Even though it says Riftstone is straightforward, this will find pawns of straightforward inclination. The reality is, you don't need that, because you can do an advanced pawn search and you can just say you can change the inclination manually here. But before we do that, let's talk about the level of the pawn, because there's an important thing here, and that is, depending on the level of the pawn that you summon, in relation to your own character level, that is going to dictate how much that pawn is going to cost. So my character right now is level 27, so if I just look for level 27 pawns, basically it's going to be free. So you can rent pawns for free so long as they're only as high as your own character, which is something that I always do because I like to save my rift crystals in case I actually need something. So usually I don't really get pawns above my level. But say you're like, no, I actually want stronger pawns. I'm struggling a little bit and I want something stronger. You can make it go up. You can, increase the limit of the maximum level of pawns that you're summoning. The more you increase it, the higher it goes. As you can see right here, I can summon a pawn that is 10 levels above me, but it's going to cost me 1,300 Rift Crystals. Now, when you put the setting here, this is just a search parameter, so you're actually not summoning anything yet, but this will let you see pawns of this level. So if I go do this and then I say search, they're going to send a lot of these pawns away, and they're going to send me pawns within that level range between 27 and 37. So as you can see, now we have Cotton over here, level 34, and this would cost us 553 Rift Crystals. We have Caraway here, level 33, 396 crystals, and you guys get the idea. And you can also increase the minimum level so that you only get higher level pawns, but here you have maximum level pawn woos. You can still talk to them, see their details, see what spells they have. Like right here, if you go to the vocation, it actually tells you, oh, I have High Frigger, High Salamander, High Seism, Meteoron. So you get an idea of what to expect from this pawn. You can also see his core skills, his augments, all of this stuff. Now, ideally, when the game actually releases, you will be hiring pawns from other players, which means that we'll actually get some interesting builds in here because these are all computer-generated pawns because I haven't really gone online yet because I don't want to mess up the whole official pawn thing that I still have to set up, so I haven't touched that all that much. And you can see all of the details here about the pawn that you will potentially recruit. Now, my recommendation is don't actually hire higher level pawns unless you're really struggling. I would stick to searching for pawns only of the same level as me because those are going to be free to rent. So that's usually the way that I do it. So level 27, 27. Then another thing that you can choose is like, okay, what type of pawns do I want? Do I want a fighter? Do I want an archer, a thief, whatever, right? So say you're looking for a tank, you're probably looking for a fighter or a warrior, right? Looking for damage dealers, that's pretty much this whole row, right? Ranged damage dealers would be an archer and a sorcerer. This is kind of how you go about choosing your pawn. So like, let's say for instance, I'm looking for an archer because right now I have like 2 level 10 pawns or whatever. So let's go look for an archer to replace my current level 10 archer. It's going to be free anyways. You can also choose if you want to. It's like, oh, I only want male pawns, female pawns, beast-ran pawns, or human pawns. So I only want a female beast-ran pawn. If you have something that you just, it needs to be a beast-ran. I want my party to have beast-ran on it, and I want a female beast-ran. You can do that, right? You can just select it there, and it will only show you pawns that are female and beast-ran. Now I have another thing here, which is show only pawns with knowledge of priority quest. This might confuse you a little bit, so let me actually show you what they're talking about. When you have your quest log up here, you will see that one of these quests is going to be your priority quest. And whenever a pawn in your party knows the solution to that quest and can guide you, it will show up in there. So as you can see there, for instance, the Nameless Village, there's a pawn that knows how to solve that quest, and I can ask for his guidance, and so he'll kind of like take me to the Nameless Village and it will tell me what I have to do next in that specific quest. But as you can see, currently I don't have a single pawn that knows how to solve the quest of a Case of Sculptor's Block. Now, let's say you don't like the guidance. You don't have to choose a pawn that knows how to do it. And even if you do, you don't have to, let the pawn solve the quest for you. You can still explore it for yourself, figure everything out for yourself. But let's say you've been struggling with this quest and like, oh, I don't know how to solve this quest. Okay, I just don't know. I'm lost. I need to figure this out. You can just straight up go into the Rift. Make sure to mark that quest as your active quest, which you can do by pressing X on your Xbox controller, square on your PlayStation controller, and if you're on PC, mouse and keyboard, it'll be Y. You press that and it'll become active, right? And then you go into the Rift and you're like, okay, I want a pawn that is an archer, like we were talking about. I want it to be archer, level 27, female beastren. I want it to have quest knowledge. That's what this does. It will only show pawns that know how this quest works so that they can show you how this quest works. By default, this thing is on, which is actually not something that I like. I wish that this was off by default, and then you could manually toggle it if you want to, but they've made it on by default, so it's whatever. Now, finally, because we're doing... did I put a thief instead of an archer? My bad. And finally, since we're doing a damage-dealing pawn, I'm going to go ahead and say straightforward, because I want him to just go in there. I want her to just go in there and beat the crap out of everything. Then if you want to get very granular, you can straight up choose pawns based on the skills that they have, which I'm not going to do for this case, but you can get really granular. Like, let's say, no, I want a spellcaster. I want him to have these very specific things. You can do that. Like, say, for instance, you have a sorcerer that does fire, and you would want an archer that comes with tearing shot, because that will actually put tar on your enemies. Wait, tar, doesn't that work like oil? I think tarring shot works kind of like oil. So they become flammable. So then you use your fire spells, and your enemies are going to be flammable because your archer has tearing shot, right? So you do that, and now you're going to go ahead and going to search for the pawn. As you can see, all of the pawns are going to leave, and only pawns that will show up will be of that very specific type that I've selected. Some of them, and once you actually get to the final game, and if you're playing online, some of those will be generated by players. Others will probably be generated by the computer. But as you can see right here, here's one of the pawns that I generated, and you can see that it is a female beastren. You can go pawn details. You can see right there, female beastren. Here's her height, all of her stats, all of that good stuff. Her vocation, wherein she has rank 8 archer. And then you can even see the weapon skills, and somewhere in there, there should have been tarring shot, but for some reason there isn't. Huh. I guess this is not working super accurately. Oh no, it's because incendiary shot is an advanced form of tarring shot. Never mind. It is working exactly as intended. So it's working. It's just this is the advanced version of the skill that I selected. For a second there, I was like, what the hell is going on, game? You're trolling me right now. But yeah, so as you can see, the pawn has exactly what you've chosen, and Bob's your uncle. Now keep in mind the inclination stuff, because I do think that is going to be important. So if you're looking for mages, you want them to be kind-hearted. If you're looking for damage dealers, you probably want them to be straightforward. And if you're looking for, you know, tanks and stuff, you probably want them to be calm. But yeah, there's a lot more stuff to play around in here. Like, for instance, there's a really cool thing that lets you set a quest for your pawn. So what this does is it allows you to basically set up your pawn so that other players get a quest whenever your pawn goes out. So right here, Ogre Eliminator, you want to set a quest, and it's like, here's your quest. You got to defeat an ogre. So anybody that takes my pawn will have this quest for them, and then I can also choose a reward. I can choose to give you an item if you complete my quest. Like, let's say, okay, if you complete my quest, you get these 3 fish. And boom, it's done. So from this moment onwards, you know, after you rest at an inn, because remember, resting at the inn is what updates your pawn with the server and all of that stuff. But after you rest at an inn, whenever somebody takes your pawn out, they will have that quest. It's an optional quest. They don't have to do it. But if they do it, your pawn gains more experience against that monster. So your pawn gains more experience with ogres. You gain medals. You get all of these things. And then, you know, your pawn becomes more desirable to other players because he's a more experienced pawn. You can also ask them to, okay, listen, I want you to get my pawn to get an item. Like, hey, I need you to find me 2 golden trove beetles. And nobody's going to give me golden trove beetles, but, you know, you can do that. And then the quest objective becomes that, which I think is a neat little system. Like, everybody has their pawns. Each pawn's going to have a quest. And then if you complete the quest, you get additional rewards. It's kind of a cool little thing to play around with. But obviously, the whole point of the Riftstone is for you to find your ideal pawn. And hopefully, this tutorial helped you understand how this whole thing works. Other than that, my only other recommendation is whenever you are planning out your excursions, take short trips first until you feel more comfortable with the world. Don't just be like, oh, I'm going to travel to the other side of the world. You might get stuck. So just pick up a couple of quests, do a couple of quests that are close to town, explore, get your feet wet, understand how the game is played, and then follow through. But anyway, that is going to be it for now. This guide's already going to be way longer than it probably needed to be. Hopefully this helps you guys out with a couple of tips here. If there's anything that you guys want to know in specific, leave it in the comment section down below. I'll try to answer it. Maybe I'll do more guides on more specific things and specific vocations and whatnot. But yeah, that's going to be once I actually get my feet a little bit more wet in the game. This is just to help you guys get started, help you guys get familiar with the systems. Hopefully it helps. If it does, hit the like button. It really helps me out. Thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay strong, stay safe. Peace out.